like to introduce Buddy Lane to start tonight's program. Thank you.
Thank you. But before we start, I think we should all give a round of applause to this lady over here, because if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have half of the things to show you. I don't know how she does it. I'd call her up. I said, I've got this. Can you get back there? Bring it right over. And she'd do it. And then she'd call me back 2 hours. I've got it all done. You got anything else? Getting to the evolution of our, the first part of our program is filling stations. Before the advent of filling stations, you could still buy gasoline at hardware stores or places where they had bulk oil and things like that. You could buy a gallon can in a sealed container, or you could go and buy 5 gallons at a time, and it was your job to dump it into your vehicle, such as it was. One of the first and most unique gas pumps that I ever saw was one that was like a great big glass vial. And when you'd pull up to the station and you'd order 2, 5, 10 gallons of gas, and what they would do, they'd pump it out of the storage tank up until this glass thing, like a measure that you people have at home, so you could visually see what you were getting, and then they'd shut off the pump and open a valve and dump it into your vehicle. And that's back in the turn of the century. The first gas station in this town was Emil Jean, who was Frank father-in-law, had the station where Charlie Eunusis had it. Emil Jean operated that station from 1920 until 1936, when Charlie Eunusis bought it from him. And to my knowledge, it was always a Gulf station. During the course of the years, it changed hands many times, and I hope before Bob and I are done that we have a little chronological order of who owned the station at different times. We're getting all of this information out of valuation taxes, and we spent an awful lot of time reading those and trying to decipher the things, because if a person is charged on his taxes for a gas pump, it has his home address rather than the location of the business. So it's got some kind of, it's tough, and you ask people, do you remember this, you remember that? So that's what it is. We do have 2 pictures here of Charlie when he had the station, and on the back of one of them is what the area looks like now. So we have before and after. The next station in town was Bert Bush's, who was right here on Main Street. He opened his station in 1926, and he had Saucony gasoline, or some of us remember the Flying Red Horse. That in later years, Carol Varney bought that station, bought the business from Mr. Bush, and Donald Varney ran it for a period of time. And then when Benoit sold their garage on Maple Street to Arthur Salem, the 2 brothers, Mickey and Jake, moved over to Bush's garage, and they operated their business there until they built the place on Grove Street in 1956. In 1929, Eugene McCarthy opened a Sinclair station on 26th School Street, and he operated that until 1934, when my dad bought the business from him. I have a picture. Yeah, I've got 2 pictures here of one picture here, Mr. Bush with his dog, and on the back side is as it is today.
Bundy?
Yeah.
I think it's important to tell your audience where Bush's garage is. Not everybody would know where Bush's
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's where Langevin auction house is. It's right on the main street. And that gets me to another point. When gas stations first evolved, they were always right on the curb. And it worked out good in small towns because you didn't have a lot of traffic. But in cities, it proved to have an awful lot of congestion because first would stop for gas and all the traffic would stop until he was filled up. This is the picture of the garage that my dad leased from Eugene McCarthy back in 1934. That's a picture of the fire that we had in 1954. On the back side is the picture of the Quabog office as it is now. When the office was built, it replaced a hardware store, a restaurant, a barber shop, a
Grocery
garage,
store.
Heartbreak Hotel.
Grocery store.
Yeah, grocery store, and a three-family house right next to the fire station. In 1930, Robert Quill opened up or owned the Shell station right at the intersection of Grove Street and North Main Street. I don't know whether he ever operated the station or not, but he owned it for a good many years. Here's a picture of what it looks like today. Probably the old folks would remember when John and Emma Sharon owned that station for a good many years. And at one time, Andy Brown owned it, and Root Knight owned it for a period of time.
Dave McIntyre was the one that
When initially, okay, that's good to know. According to my records, John and Emma Sharon took it over in 1949, but it seemed it was earlier than that. 'Cause I remember them being there forever. In 1930, F. Arthur Fulham opened the garage on Main Street where Gillette equipment is now.
Chevy's now.
And he had a city service gasoline.
What brand, Mike?
City service,
Oh, Simpson.
which is Citgo today. I've misplaced the picture that the Conley sisters had a Texaco station at 67 South Main Street. They opened it in 1931, and in checking the valuation taxes, I was surprised that they continued to have that station until the 50s.
Yeah.
But I remember the pumps being there, and I think their office was in the house, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were two sisters that ran it.
Jane and Teresa.
Jane and Teresa. In 1932, Doc Grace's mother, Sonia, either built or bought the service station at 327 Main Street, which is the car wash now. We owned my brothers, my dad, and myself owned the station at one time, and my memory doesn't serve me too well. Maybe Bob can tell me the exact year, but this picture is somewhere around 1970.
Oh, that's
I was
actually,
a point that I would.
yeah.
That had a number of different owners over the years. Ronnie Barrow's father ran it for a while. My brother
He
Bob.
rented it from me.
What's that?
He rented it from me.
Okay. And you and Joe Benoit worked together Back in the
I went
60s?
with him in '64.
Okay.
I think the only ones that owned it were my father and then you.
Yeah, it was,
I owned it.
Well,
yeah, in
whoever.
later years, yeah. Because when we had, it, we leased it from Getty, because.
Right, because they fixed it up and you had an option to buy, but nobody else in between owned it.
Okay, so your mom had it from 1932 until the time that we bought it. Yeah.
But he mentioned that this is where the car washes is
Yes,
today.
I think I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wasn't Pop Sharon in there for a long time?
Yeah, and
George.
I think a good many of
George,
us
they called him
remember,
Pop.
remember young John Sharon,
Right.
big heavy set boy.
Paul's son.
That,
That was the grandson of George.
Yeah, and he spent much of his hours just sitting in the chair, waiting for business. In 1947, Alfred Sharon built and started operating the Sunoco station down the South Main Street where the ambulance squad is now. They ran it from 47 to 56, and then Russ and John Emerson ran it in 56. Ray Baldy Plant ran it in 58, and then Alfred took it back in 59 and ran it, how long,
72.
till 72. Ironically, I just went to some calling hours tonight for Eddie Wales, who to my knowledge, was the last person to operate that station before it became the thing for the emergency squad. Here's some pictures of the building, and as it is today, and the owner.
Freddie tells the Blue Sunoco there was some fierce competition in town where everybody was trying to convince the consumer that Blue Sunoco was no good for your car.
I remember that. Okay. In 1946, Ed Quinn opened the Buick, well, no, and initially it was Kaiser Frazer. And according to the records, Charlie Quinn, Ed's son, had the dealership, and Ed, who was Charlie's father, had the gas station. The way that the valuation taxes are set up, they set up that way. And they had, this is where Frank Cook had his garage down on South Main Street. Then George Raymond had it after that. And I don't know of any other person that had a gas station other than those two people.
How late did they have that one there, buddy? The gas station, do you know?
I would say probably late 50s. If I had the information on the dealerships with me, I could probably give you the exact date.
Kurt Busch.
In 1953, Joe Hardy built and opened his place of business down on the Brookfield Road, right at the intersection of 67 and 148. He sold city service gas also. And Joe operated that business until 1984. He still owns the building, but the gas and everything else is gone. Here's an up-to-date photo of Joe's place. In 1954, after we had the fire on School Street, we decided to build a different place. And I think I mentioned this at the last thing. We had the fire in July. We had all the permits, all the work, and everything taken care of, and we opened for business the 1st of November. Try and do that today. And when we opened the station, we had Esso there as well. And in fact, it was in 1954. It was strictly a repair garage and a gas station. In 1956, we took on International, and in 1959, we took on Rambler. Here's a
We had the
picture.
case agency one up there.
Oh, that's right, we
Case
still
Farmers.
had that, yeah. Yeah, that was almost as bad a venture as snowmobiles in 1972.
Mercury snowmobiles?
Yeah. In the 40s, well, in fact, goes way back to 1929, Ted Benoit had a garage on 13 Maple Street, where the Curbs building is now. In later years, he had the back part that Salem has now. But as a kid, I remember Ted having the garage there. And I swear that he had Amoco gas at that station. But all through the valuation and taxes, I couldn't find where he ever paid any taxes on those pumps like everybody else did. There's a picture of one of the records that he had. Then this is the last station that was built in town. In 1956, the Benoit brothers built the garage on Grove Street, and they operated, they had a gas station there. In later years, they had Studebaker and Jeep, and they sold snowmobiles too. I think they were a lot more successful than we were in our venture. And that was the last station that was built in town. That was 1956. And as we all know today, there were 13 over the years. And as we all know today, we don't have any. Where have you gone? Anyone have any questions about that? Yes, Bob.
Well, you just touched upon it. How did a town the size of North Brookfield, with a fewer number of cars, presumably in those days, support 13 gas stations? And why aren't there? Isn't the station that's at the intersection up there across from the car wash, that's still open?
That's closed.
No.
Oh, they closed again?
Yeah.
Oh. Why aren't there any gas stations? Not that I'm arguing for one, but...
Well, after I ceased operations in the big garage where the library is now, I approached Cumberland Farms, I approached the Dairy Mart, I approached any number of others. And the answer to them, from them, was not enough traffic.
Big volume today.
Yeah, it's all big volume today. It's like years and years ago, Alan Chase, he was after me every day of the week. Put in a car wash. You know, North Brookfield should have a car wash. And I'd say, that's fine, Alan, but it doesn't have the traffic. One of the beauty parts of North Brookfield is you don't go to North Brookfield unless you have a reason. That's what makes it such a nice town. Yeah. It's like Hardwick. Who goes to Hardwick unless they have a reason? And that makes Hardwick a nice town, other than the problem they got with the landfill.
But
Yes, Bob?
to answer Bob's question, a gas station has got to be 10,000 gallons a day now to what they feel is profitable. We used to do that 2 months.
My other question is, in the 30s in particular, and the 20s, how was the gasoline handled so that it didn't explode? It's such a volatile substance. I would assume that today's pumps that keep all the fumes in so cars won't explode when they're being filled. With that, I can just see that glass thing you were describing break and fall on a heated surface and blow the whole town up. Why weren't there more fires and explosions?
I really can't answer that. I can remember one good fire. I don't know if my brother Bob is going to mention it or not. Go ahead, Bob.
You talk about the volatility of gasoline. Of course, for it to explode, you've got to have just vapors. You know, I mean, they show all these explosions in the movies and everything else, but it's all, you know, theatrics. But anyway, we used to drain gasoline tanks and repaired them, you know, solder them and so forth, and put them back on the cars, which they don't do today, of course. It's too dangerous now. But there was one time when we had a tank off a car. This is at the old garage that you saw where the fire was. The ceiling in that place is only 7 feet. We drained the gasoline into water buckets. If you remember the old water buckets, the gooseneck on them, they're always at the gas stations. And this one time, we had a tractor in there that we were working on. Caught fire. My dad grabbed the closest water bucket to throw on it, and it was gasoline.
When you talk about volatile gasoline, we were looking at pictures earlier, and the gas pumps, when we were at School Street, was right at the main street area. The driveway was there, the gas pumps were there, and Heartbreak Hotel was right next to it. For some reason, they had stripped the engine. The engine was still in the car. And my dad, in his wisdom, got up and stood on each fender and had the gas right out of the pump and washing the engine down. So it was the type of car that you had to turn the ignition on to get the starter to turn. Well, whoever was in the car, he told him to start just turn it over a little bit so he could wash a different section. Well, when he did, all the gasoline exploded. And for the rest of his life, he had no skin from the ankles to the knees. He paid dearly for that. You remember, Bob? You remember that?
Lots of accidents with gasoline.
A little
Benoit kids
interesting
get killed
tidbit of
doing
information
that.
I came
Right.
across. The gas station at the corner of Grove and North Main Street there, back when they had completed the water works, the reservoir on Bell Hill and all that, they had a little extra money left over in their budget, so they installed an iron watering trough for the use of horses and cattle. So you could kind of say that was a filling station for horses and cattle before we get a gas station.
That's like the one, the planter at the intersection of the North Brookfield Road and 60 and 9 in East Brookfield. The one that's the obstruction where you have to pull on the road to see if they can come. Roger, you had...
Didn't that Benoit kid get killed from doing a gas tank?
No, what happened there, Jimmy Wiley had bought a brand new roller, a small roller, that probably stood about this high. And it came through with a dent in the tank. So he went to repair it. And there was some sort of coating inside that tank that the minute he put the torch to it, the thing exploded. And it just peeled the whole thing right off and hit him on the top of the head and killed him instantly. That was a tragedy.
It was zero antifreeze.
Oh, is that what it had in it?
Yeah.
Okay. I was never sure what it had.
The old alcohol antifreeze they used to use.
Real fine guy. He had a 37 Ford convertible with a 60 engine in it, 60 horsepower. The pistons in it were about this big around. And he was a real nice guy. He used to let us use it all the time. Any other questions about the service station? Okay. Now in the course of researching all this stuff, we come across so many different things. My original intention, once I got that done, was to list all the businesses during the 30s. That didn't work because there were so many of them. And having the continuity. I think Bob and I are going to spend a couple of years on this project, get the continuity. Who had this business at the beginning and who followed through. I think that would be a very, very interesting part of the town history. So we wound up doing 1929. In 1929, there were 10 grocery stores in North Brookfield. There were 3 barbers. There were 3 coal, oil, and I put down ice too, because I know at least one of them had ice, because we used to chase around with the ice truck. With 3 auto service, 2 hardware stores, 2 dry goods stores, 2 insurance agencies, 2 variety stores, 2 funeral directors, 2 restaurants, 1 clothing store, 1 livery, 1 furniture store, 1 optometrist, 1 shoe store, 3 variety stores, I take that back, 1 bakery, 1 bottling works, 1 grist mill, 1 shoe repair, the apple orchard, which is a Lincoln's orchard, 1 doctor, 1 men's clothing store, 1 lumber and lumberyard and builder, 1 junk dealer. This was very interesting. The junk dealer was located on Benoit Street, and as a kid, I remember his backyard was absolutely full of junk, just full. Remember Mr. Tillman? And just before the war, it was all gone. And the story that I heard, it all went into Japan just before the war. There was 1 pharmacy, 1 movie theater, 1 veterinarian, 1 antique dealer, 1 poultry farmer, 1 overall manufacturing company, 1 cider mill, 1 farm machinery dealer, 1 blacksmith, 1 printer, and 1 spa. Here they are. These other people may have been prior to 1929, but in 1929, these were established businesses. Ted Benoit had the garage on Maple Street, where the Kurtz place is now. Dennis Boyle had a clothing store somewhere on Main Street.
Next to the First National.
If Bob and I live long enough, we'll find out exactly when, where, and why.
That was right next to the First National where the pizza parlor is now. The alley.
It was
In the Grace Building.
And then
Yeah,
Dennis.
okay.
Yeah.
Hope this isn't going to tell our age.
At this point, who cares?
Freddie Brucker had a barber shop in the Adams block. It would be right over where the loan center is for the Worcester County, for the North Brookfield Savings. Bert Bush had the livery where Langevin has his auction house and the house. In fact, the auction house wasn't there. Where the auction house is where Dr. Ludden, the family doctor, lived. In later years, Matt Beverly's parents bought it for him. I've got it. Well, I won't. All I'll say, Doc Ludden is the man that brought me into this world. Fred Clapp had a furniture store where the old post office is, where Hair Mechanics is now. Nellie Collins had a dry goods store on Main Street. In later years, it was down here, but when I was growing up, it was up there somewhere. Where?
Well, Nellie Collins moved, Mr. Collins moved up where the, just by the 5 and 10 there, this side of the 5 and 10, Nordman's, the package store.
The original store,
Okay.
though, was right at
But,
the corner where Irish Crusoe's office is now.
Well, that was
No, that was
Pam's.
later years.
Collins.
Yeah, that was in later
Up
years.
there, right?
No, they were up there earlier, and they moved down.
Oh, see, I had it just
Way
the
back,
opposite.
it used to be Lunchway Girls ran a millinery store down here where the newsroom is, and then Billy Collins bought that, somehow they were related, and that's when he moved up near the 5 and 10.
Dr. Corbin, he's an optometrist. His office and home was where the office is for the Congregational Church now. Larry Cotter was a shoe store, and I think that was that in the Duncan block.
Second floor.
No.
No, he was on a kid. He was on the main.
Des Plaines came in
Des
like this,
Plaines?
the Cotters came in this way. From the alley, near the First National, there was Nally, then you had Mr. Cotter.
Yeah.
With the glasses on his forehead.
Again, in the Grace Building?
No.
No.
Oh, the other way. Oh, he was in the Dunkin' block
This
there.
way. And
Okay.
then Des Plaines was like this. They had a, you come in
Yeah,
Cotter's.
the doors weren't on the street.
They were
just-
in.
Both doors were in,
Yeah.
yeah.
Recessed.
That's the word.
In 1929, Mary Crowley owned the coal and oil company on Air Street. I think they always operated on Air Street. I think they had their tanks over on off of Mill Street. But as I was growing up, whenever you look for anybody in Crowley's business, you always found them in Jimmy Irie's store, which was in the Grace Building,
He had a
right?
desk there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, we're going ahead a little bit on Jimmy Ivory's store. He had a branch of the Ware Co-op Bank. Because I remember as a kid, we used to go down and pay the mortgage down there for our home, which was probably $8 a month, something like that. Big money back then.
At one time, we paid the electric light bill over there too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, way back.
My father kind of forced Jimmy Ivory into the hardware business.
Oh, right.
He owned the building, and he went to an auction, and he thought he was buying a couple of pen lights or something, and he thought he was buying a pair of skis and whatever, but every time he bid, he was getting dozens or hundreds. And he ended up with everything to do with the hardware store. He almost forced him into it.
Hey, Felix Daisy had a variety and spa across the street. Well, they just rehabbed that building, made condos out of it. It's right across the street from the senior center.
Next to the first Bronx store.
Yeah. His place was on the left side of the building, and Rosick had their first store on the right-hand side. Yeah. Next was Patrick Daniels. He had a grocery store on Main Street. Now, was that right next to the Catholic Church?
That's where
Yeah, where
Nika
Joey
was.
Okay. That's what I thought. Then, I have a few names here where they paid their taxes on stock and merchandise that they had, but no names. Francis Cummings. Anybody?
Was that on School Street?
And I've got
not
no
School,
address.
Elm Street?
No, it was between Fulham's hardware store and the market where Igo was, in there for a
And
little while.
what was it? There was a restaurant there at one time.
Well, the restaurant was over on the end when Fulham gave up the hardware store.
Yeah, but even before that, there was a restaurant. so I'm
In
told.
between, there was a bakery there and there was a florist shop, but Cummings was in that store at one time, and I don't know what he...
Okay. Margaret Doyle. Margaret Doyle. Antonio and Jimmy. Had the barber shop and a bowling alley on Central Street. His son still owns it.
You said there were two barber shops?
Yes.
What about Trick Dunphy?
No, I don't have anything on Dumpy. I had Jess Quinn, and I had Freddie Brucker and Tony.
Wasn't Sullivan a
Oh,
barber?
you're right, but I think that was later years.
Oh, early.
Really? Well, we'll maybe catch it when I go through here. Then Thomas Cuddy Insurance on Main Street. Their business started in 1923. When I was talking to Betsy yesterday, she thought that she had the oldest business that was consecutive in family owned. Her great-grandmother, her grandmother started the business, Kate Cuddy, and then her father, Tom, took it over, and Betsy operates it now with her sister. Everett Hatch. No. Joe Herrard at the bakery at the corner of St. John and North Common Street. We have some pictures here. You want to take those out?
Oh, and the
Yeah. That was I think everybody in the Harrod family worked in there for, at one time or another. Then Oscar Hibbor had the bottling plant on the corner of Grove Street where J&S has their auction place now. And E. Howard and Sons, they had S.S. Pierce Groceries on Main Street in the ground floor of the town hall. We have some pictures of that. The thing that impressed me most, this is a couple of the Harrod brothers with their delivery, and there's the crew in the backyard.
We want.
Howard store with the beautiful, it should be in that group. Had a beautiful tin ceiling.
Okay, yeah, that's Howard's store. Doc
They
Cobbin.
also live upstairs.
I actually still live.
Part of it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a picture of Howard's store with Doc Corbin, the optometrist in the
Why
store.
don't you just take them?
Oh, okay.
Some of that stuff is still upstairs.
Howard's. The next one was C.J. Howland, by the grist mill on Mill Street, right across the street from where Howe Lumber is now. Howe Lumber bought that business from Fulham Lumber, and they just use it for storage. When they first started here in this area, they operated there before they bought the place at the town line of East Brookfield and Spencer. I guess I left that one in. Next on the list is Tom Igo. He had a grocery store on School Street, which was one of the buildings that was replaced when the Quabog built their office. It was right next door to my dad's garage. And I remember as a kid, we never stole. We almost liberated, but we borrowed Mr. Igo's truck one time, and we were caught down where Shabbat is now. Everybody ran away, but Danny Thompson, Harvey's twin brother. Now Harvey was Danny was the most easygoing guy you'd ever see in your life, but poor Danny's the one that got caught. Another time, the fellows that worked in the garage, they used to be devils, and they'd take a Model T coil and charge it up to a vehicle, so that if you touch the vehicle, you'd get a real shock. So they charged up this vehicle and backed it up to Tom's truck, bumper to bumper. So they transferred the charge to his truck. And they say he came out and had a bag of groceries on and went to open the door, and he went sky high. But those guys were like that. William J. Igo. This is Tom Igo's brother. I'm told he had the spa in the Adams block that in later years Bob Perrin bought. I.E. Irish, John Irish's father, he had an insurance business somewhere on Main Street. I don't know exactly where it was.
Upstairs.
Was it upstairs? Or
upstairs,
on where Doc White was?
Yeah, just opposite, same
Okay.
stairs.
Okay, so that was in the Adams block.
That's William Igo you're talking about?
Yeah,
They used to call him Bill Igo. That was Ralph Igo's father.
Yeah.
right. Jimmy Ivory, he had the hardware store in the Grace Building. Then Emil Jean, he was the first one that had the gas station there over there. Then Joe Kamovich had a shoe repair place down in the basement where Headway is now, just below where the video thing and the pharmacy used to be. Then my great uncle Charles Lane had a funeral parlor over on Maple Street. It's the very first building on the right-hand side after you go by the cemetery.
He got rid of his customers over there.
What?
He got rid of his customers next door.
Then,
All done.
there's been some discussion on that, but looking at the valuation and taxes, the first listing that I find for Lincoln was Arthur Lincoln in 1929, and he was listed with 57 acres of land, and he also was listed as owning the Crucell House, which is the house where Tony Lincoln, who just passed away. That was the Crucell House. So according, from what I found, Brookfield Orchards was started in 1929.
It was a lot before that.
What's that?
It was before 19.
Really? No. Bob thought it was
I once heard that Ben Banks saw so much snow in North Brookfield that it covered up all the apple trees. But old Ben Banks planted the trees that are only 18 inches high.
Yeah.
I think, I'll ask Louise, I think it's 1918.
Okay. Then there was a John C. Lucier, Lucier. They'll ring a bell. Then Dr. Emerson Ludden, as I say, where the auction house is now.
Yeah, you said there's only one doctor. Dr. Royal was in town then.
In 29?
Sure, he's from the teens. And I don't think Dr.
Well, see, this is one of the problems with valuation taxes, unless he owned property, and actually, he never owned property. Jane, his wife, always showed up in the valuation taxes. So it's very, very hard, you know, he may have been in business, but he wasn't listed as having, and that's the only thing that I ever
Never owned
owned.
anything.
I didn't know they were Jewish.
You're related to your father, everything was in your mother thing.
During World War II, Bernard Baruch, who was the
Oh, okay.
financier who advised all these presidents and kings and all, when England was being bombed left and right, the King of England asked Bernard Baruch, "What do you think we should do?" And he said, "I'd put Canada in my wife's name."
Next on the list is Maurice Longley. Had a dry goods store on Main Street in the Adams Block. Because I've seen a picture with it. By the way, this would be Chris Bennett's grandparents. Yeah. Then John Lyons had the funeral parlor at Gilbert Street where
North
Hill
Main
Street is
Street.
now.
North Main
He
Street.
had it there before he had the
Langevin restored the house in '56. My father restored the present 44 Gilbert Street with Al. They remodeled the whole house and the kitchen. I got my merit badge from Lyons in coin collecting in May of '55. So they were living in there in '55. Langevin bought.
I knew he had the funeral parlor
Then
there.
there was a bakery there. I think Paul said he saw that somebody had a bakery.
Yeah, there was a bakery there.
Yeah. But, no, I meant to mention that to you. I caught that.
So it was North Main.
Yes.
At Red House.
No, I don't know where Johnny Lyons raised his family. I don't know where he lived.
He was there.
Did
They were
they?
raised down on,
Then the next one on the list is Charlie Myers. I'm told that he had the store before your folks had it.
Yeah, there was a meat market there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then Madura's store on the corner of St. John and North Common Street. There's a picture here of Mr. Madura in front of it. And the way we verified the location was the house with a mansard roof on North Common Street.
That was opposite the Huron's Gate?
Yeah, right across the street.
That's actually, it was in the garage.
Yeah, it was in the garage.
Buddy, I'd like to interject something because you're talking about these little stores. This is the America's melting pot. Before the Civil War, perhaps, it was mostly waspy.
Yeah.
But the Irish come in the 1840s, and the French really didn't come in from Canada till after the Civil War. And then the Poles and the Lithuanians came, maybe turn of the century. Kaminsky bought a farm and so forth, the Rodzik bought a farm and so forth. And so America's melting pot, it almost seemed that everybody stayed with their own, they didn't speak perfect English back then, and they would have their little ethnic stores. And that's the way North Brookfield has evolved over the decades.
Yeah.
Now it's pretty much, it's pretty homogeneous.
Yeah, well, you don't have too many choices either.
You got,
At the walk.
right.
In, the next one is E.C. Murphy Oil. I spoke to John the other day, and he said that the business started in 1920 with his great-grandfather, then his grandfather, then his father, and himself. It had continuity since 1920. Then Eugene McCarthy, we spoke about him earlier. He had the auto service that my dad bought from him in 1934, and he had the coal and oil business. And he also had a gas pump right next to the town hall that we're paying for now, I'm told. I remember as a kid that the gas pump was right at the foot of the stairs where you took the exit from the town hall, the great hall. And now I'm told that the thing is contaminated.
We still don't know where it's coming from.
No.
It's a possibility.
Okay. Next on the list was John Nardi. He had the grocery store on Summer Street. Would be on the building there now has a laundromat, and one of the last tenants in there was Maxie Allen. He had an antique shop or catch-all shop or something. That's where Nardi's Market was when I was doing it.
What the hell is a
Yeah.
Then Alex Peacock had a clothing store on Main Street. Now, where was it?
Where Max TV is.
Yeah.
Was Max still there?
Max still there?
The video no.
No, he said where Max
I know, I
TV
heard it
is.
say that. Was. Yeah, but they don't know where Max TV.
You correct my English,
I'll
like,
wash your ears out tomorrow.
he does that, you know, if you have trouble hearing. I had my ears cleaned out 6 months ago.
Jesse Quinn. Anybody that ever went to a basketball game in the town hall knew Jesse Quinn. Because he had more actions than any of the players on the league. He was right with the program. And where was his barbershop? Was on Summer Street.
Downstairs.
Well, actually,
They're blocked off now.
Opposite the
Matt's
pub.
older than me.
before that, his barber shop was in the Duncan block. We went
Yeah,
up,
that's right, too.
went up one flight of stairs,
Yeah.
went in there, and I went in there one time for a haircut. And it was in the evening, you know, and we got quite a few people there. Okay, he says, I'll be back, I'm going for supper.
Yeah, Jesse.
Then he went to Spencer, then he came back to North Brookfield, and he was under the, opposite the police station.
Underneath, before,
On the other side,
I'm told,
they
before
tried him
Ted
as
Ravick
blocked
had
off.
the lunch cart there.
Well, in that same building.
About the same time.
Underneath Leo Ledoux's.
You
Yeah.
got Purcell?
Okay, right.
Before
But
that,
it's blocked off now.
Okay.
before that, it was
In
the
the next
Chinese,
building,
it was the Chinese laundry there.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Well, he didn't pay any taxes because I never found his, unless he was Americanized.
So anyway, Jess, you might well, we don't care, he's not here. He had his barber shop there. And Jess wasn't too ambitious. And his wife always came and cleaned the place for him, you know. And one day I was in there, and he said, by God, I fixed up May. He says, good. What happened? He says, well, she's getting too old to bring those ashes out of the cellar. I got an oil burner for her. That's true.
Next on the list was Frank Foster.
Oh, yeah.
He had the store at the great big block just past, it's 2 doors past the lawyer on Elm Street. The one where everybody parks on the sidewalk because there's no room to park in front of the house. But Foster had the store right at the very first one on the right-hand side as you're facing the building. And to my knowledge, at one time, he was fire chief too. If he wasn't fire chief, he was one of the engineers, but I'm almost certain he was a fire chief.
Excuse me, buddy, what business did he have? What kind of
It
business?
was a store, yeah.
Groceries.
The next was Charlie Fulham, had the hardware store in the block that was taken down when they built the thing. Charlie had it, and then I forgot all about the Western Auto Store being there.
Larry Woods.
Larry Woods had it, and then there was two restaurants.
Chet Parker.
Chet Parker had it, and Atherton had it too.
Yeah.
Before, yeah. But again, what I hope to do down the road is get the years and the continuity of who
Was
owns
it
the
Sam
before.
Atherton in the heartbreak?
Well,
Yes.
Yeah, probably, he
Yeah.
moved around.
well, I think Bill Igo owned Heartbreak Hotel at one time, and then Francis Hart, Baldy Hart's son, owned it, and then he sold it to the Cluids. And then in later years, Frankie Kingsbury owned it with his wife, who was a Cluid.
Jean LaPlante ran a meat market in that same building in the 50s
This was
Where Igo's
where
were.
Igo's
on
were.
School
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
Right, and he used to weigh his thumb, my father. He had a hamburger at 3 pounds for $1. And my father always questioned, did he weigh his thumb?
After Igo got out, I remember Fred from Springfield, was it?
Slush line.
No, it was.
The Polish guy.
Yeah, he was a Polish guy, because my father
That's who built
my
the
father had
apartment
pet names for
upstairs.
somebody. And his name was something like Zinkowicz, and he used to call him Fred son of a bitch. And when they had the Western Auto Store there, Johnny Cushion
Yes.
worked for
He
him.
caught me stealing once.
Oh, is that right?
Very humble. I was in the 8th grade.
And my father used to call them inferior products. Then F. Arthur Fulham's garage, we passed the paper around. Then William H. Fulham had the lumber, and he built many places in town. His granddaughter was after her father, Linwood Fulham, to come up with a list of all the buildings that Fulham's built within North Brookfield and the area, but he never did.
It was their father that was the big builder that built the
Yeah.
houses,
Yeah. Oh.
not William H.
It wasn't, oh, the one before, okay. So
The
we're going back
father-
4
the father
generations.
of William and Arthur and
Charles, yeah.
One of the Fulham built a congregational church.
There is a story in the new leader that I wrote on the Fulhams, but I don't remember any of the details, about 1986. But it is documented, the Fulham history. I don't remember which Fulham. I know Teddy Fulham gave me help because I didn't mention Dick. I just omitted Dick, but it's pretty comprehensive if anybody has any interest.
Good. Then Ray Gasco had the restaurant right across from Burt Bush's in the
Albany
store.
next door to
Albany Diner.
Collins's.
Well, okay, I
Albany
remember the
Diner.
Albany, but that's what they call it.
The railroad men would come in every noontime after they delivered raw rubber to the Quabog as I can't think of his name right now. Who was the third man in charge at the Quabog? Crooks. He used to call it the Quabog, not Quabog Rubber Company, but the Quabog. And the greasy engineers would come in every noon for a greasy hamburger. It was
Well, I remember as a kid, Mr. Kennerson, who lived on Air
Air
Street, he worked for the railroad, and I used to see him.
Joe Broughton did too. I wrote a story in the North Brookfield Railroad too. I think we're going to have to resurrect some of this stuff.
The worst thing that they used to bring in, that they added to the rubber, was lamp black. When those guys would get done unloading a railroad car full
And
of
George
lamp black,
Hansen,
we were well desegregated.
grain was brought to town.
Oh, sure.
George Hansen in the 50s had young kids hauling grain.
Right across from where the highway department, yeah.
Who else remembers the train? What else was brought in town?
Coal.
Okay.
Water.
Coal cars, yeah.
And the apples from,
Yeah.
and the apples
One
from
of the
Lincoln's
reasons
Orchard
for the
went out.
railroad was before we had the water system that we have, they used to haul water from East Brookfield because we didn't have an
The
adequate water.
the shoes from the Bachelor Shoe Company were taken by oxen wagon to East Brookfield. The train came into East Brookfield in 1839. The train came to North Brookfield in 1875. All this is written. You know, it was, I documented it 20 years ago, so I guess I'm gonna have to dig it up.
Yeah, back in the late 20s, my dad used to take the train from North Brookfield to
Right.
go to school.
It closed in
Worcester.
32,
Yeah.
passenger service.
Yeah.
Connie Mack came in town in 34 on a special sidecar. There is a picture of Mack at the depot.
Then George Giguere, this is Walter Giguere's father, had a grocery store where Bob's Deli is now. I called Walter to verify. I was quite certain that that's where he got his start. And he told me that he lost the grocery store in 1929 because of the Depression to Arthur Badette's father. And Arthur Badette's father had held it for about a year, and then George and Al, George's son, bought it back. And they operated there for a number of years, and then they moved up to Main Street where where Joe and Nika owned the building. And I think Joe was the last one to have the market there, but again, it's something I've got to,
Well, the Bell was in there.
that's right, yeah. Just prior to the war, right? Because after the war, LaBelle was where bought Payne's market. We're getting into another era. Yeah. And then Payne came from the Quabbin, and he opened a store. I've got the year at home. And he ran it until LaBelle bought it from him. And then in later years, LaBelle bought Howard's store. And he operated in the main part of the town hall.
There was a Huback that owned
Yeah,
Andy Huback.
Andy had it in later years, back in the 50s.
Yeah.
Andy had it, yeah. Okay, I mentioned Mr. Benjamin. He was a junk dealer over in Benoit Street. And you owned one of those houses at one time, didn't
I
you?
own that house that he
Looking,
had, yeah.
I bet you'd like to be paying for taxes now what you're paying back then.
Yeah, and a lot of too.
All right. Chet Forte. Chester Forte.
The newsroom,
Was it?
yeah,
Okay.
had it before banks.
Oh, right.
The post office was in there too, in the
Yeah.
same building, same.
Eugene Reed, he had the pharmacy on Main Street. Gene sold it to who?
Dumas.
Dumas. Dumas sold it to Smith. Smith sold it to Newell. Then there was a young lady that, then
Red Munns.
Red Buns had it, and Red sold it to a young lady, and she,
Oh, Elaine Woolard.
West Brookfield.
okay.
Elaine Woolard.
That's the continuity of that. But it was always in the very same building, right? Sadie Revane, this was interesting. This lady was my mother-in-law's sister, and at one time she owned the movie theater, the Star Building, and my mother-in-law, when they had the silent movie, she used to get out and play the piano. And Bob mentioned, what did you mention about when talkies came? How many people lost their jobs?
15,000 Americans lost their jobs when the talkies came in and the piano players went out.
Mrs. Mahan played the piano too.
Monahan.
She was-
Monahan, yeah.
Monahan.
No, Mahan,
Oh, yeah?
Oh, Lillian Mahan.
Lillian?
from Grove Street.
Okay, yeah. Ray Mahan's wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next one is Christina Brozick. Like Butch, he was smart. He was putting everything in a female's name too. This one he had well, his father, I don't know whether we've got one of them or not. This was in the building, they just renovated, he was on the right-hand side. He went from there to where the senior center is now, and from there to where Hannaford's is now. That was,
It was another story.
I know the year on that was 1990.
Right?
Yeah, here's a picture of some of Butch's crew back then, and there's a picture of Butch in the
I
market.
remember this one. They did that clean one, right? So,
Jimmy Saunders,
Yeah, restaurant,
yeah. And where did he have it?
where Bottomley's barroom used to be.
Oh,
Where
okay.
the
Down-
assessors are
Where the
now.
assessors are now? Okay, yeah. I know, he used to live on Gilbert Street.
Right.
Yeah. Did Kenny Quick live with him?
I think so.
Okay, I thought so. You want to tell them a story about when we lived upstairs over Salem's? Before my folks bought the house on Nursery Ave, we lived upstairs over the Salem's on Gilbert Street, and my brother Bob has a story to tell.
I used to sit on the steps with Kenny Quick. And one day I just said, you should ask your mother to wash your face.
Next on the list was Clarence Sibley, an insurance business on Summer Street, where Frank A. Smith was later, and then Crucell took it over later. And
That's
then
3 insurances already. You said 2 before.
I just wanted to see if you were paying attention. That was deliberate talk.
I think it was Frank A. Smith, then
Yeah.
Sibley.
No, I remember Frank A. Smith,
Right.
but I don't ever remember Sibley.
I
Cell took over, Frank.
He lived down on,
Down
Street.
where Bob lived, on the corner of King and
Ward.
Ward. Yeah.
that was,
And
that was.
in later years, when I was growing up, Nardi lived there.
On the other corner.
You're right, yeah.
But I thought that was Sibley that lived down
Yeah, and
there.
then Scipio lived there in later years, right?
Yeah.
Scipio Ledoux.
But
Okay.
Sibley.
Dr. Winsor Smith, he was a veterinarian, and he had a place over on Grove Street, which was, yeah, you owned that place in later years, didn't you? The Roundhouse? Yeah.
And Dr. McCarthy was the second then.
Yeah. Then, okay.
Jeanette Howland, just point of information, Windsor Smith was Jeanette Howland's father.
Right, yeah.
A lot of people know Jeanette Howland.
Yeah, I have a picture at home of my grandfather and all his brothers and sisters, and Dr. Smith and all his brothers and sisters. It's the treasure of the picture. Yeah. Was taken down on the West Brookfield Road. John Sullivan, he was a barber, and I believe that he was up in the Duncan block, from what I'm told. Allison Thurber. I remember Guy Thurber, but I never knew.
He had the store where, you know, where Collins ended up, you know, where Irish's office is now. That was Thurber. Then Payne bought it from him.
Okay, so it was a grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay.
He lived down on Bigelow Hollow.
Right, yeah, because Guy Thurber lived on Valley Road. I knew he had to be a good-sized business because his stock in trade was valued at a couple $1,000. So I knew that, you know, he had to have a fairly decent business to have pay taxes on that amount of money. George Wakefield. Bob remembers him well. He's an antique dealer at, what, 2 South Main Street?
George Wakefield was the son of a Civil War veteran. And my grandparents happened to live next door to him, Paul and Sarah Potvin. And at the tender age of 3, I used to mosey on from my grandparents' house into the world of antiques, including George Wakefield, who lived to be about 85 in 1955 when he died. And he had a 29 Dodge, and as I grew older, he took me for a ride. I remember going to Ruggles Farm in Brookfield. But the most embarrassing thing in my life in the antiques business was Dad had made my sister a plywood chair and a desk. And Bob had the idea of fixing it, and I sure as hell fixed it. Dad just threw it down the dump. What do you think was in Mr. Wakefield's treasury the next day? And he was shaking his head, boy, somebody ruined this. First rule in antique dealing, don't say a word.
Speaking about that, in scavenging the dump, I think Bill Fulham fixed more bicycles
Oh, yeah.
than anybody in
Who?
this town. Bill Fulham, who
Oh,
ran.
did he?
Fulham,
Was
oh,
he a
yeah.
picker?
After
Yeah.
he retired.
And he'd go down the dump, he'd get a
Well, just
bicycle.
take it or
fix
leave
one.
it, the way they word it today, I think it's very popular.
Yeah, yeah. Then next on the list is Jimmy Warren. He started out with his poultry farm on Ward Street, where the elderly housing is now. So, he had some great big, I think they were 4-story coops that were hen houses. And little fire department training one year, we went down with the fire department and
After there were no more
set it
chickens.
up.
After there were no more chickens.
Oh, yeah, after chicken was on. We did have a barbecue. And I got a picture somewhere of Kevin Monahan and my oldest son Steve setting those places afire. They thought that was a big, big thrill. Fortunately, they didn't do that in later years, I don't think. Next is John A. White and Company, overall manufacturer, where Frank Cook had his business on Summer Street. Then George Whiting had a cider mill. According to the valuation and taxes, it was in District 3. They didn't have any road designations out in the...
Bill Boyd's farm on the West Brookfield Road, I believe.
That's way, but the cider mill
Oh,
was on Cider Mill Road, no
Okay,
less.
yeah, my dad
Yeah,
and his brother.
Walter Zaha built a house
Yeah.
where that cider mill used to
Okay.
be. It's the first house on the left as you go down Cider Mill Road. Then my grandfather, who I'm named after, had a farm machinery business at 89 Waller Street. And he ran that until the early 50s, I think it was.
Like Walnut Street?
Yeah.
I grew up on the hill.
Way up, across
Way
from
up
JJ
on top,
O'Brien's.
yeah. That's the house where I was born. And my wife, when my wife and I would go, not my present wife, but the first wife, we used to go walking. And we'd walk by the house, and I said, you can bow down. Go by Mecca now.
I don't think she ever did.
Go to hell. Then Peter LaRue had a blacksmith shop on Elm Street, and later years Rocky Reel took it over. But it was down where Myrtle LaChance lived. One house up from the house on the corner of Grant and Elm Street. But it was a building that's set down back. I remember as a kid, I used to spend a lot of time in the blacksmith shop, and then in the later years, it was over on St. Clair Avenue. Yeah,
Next to Archie LaForte.
right, yeah.
Hey, I remember that, chico.
Then Horace Lawrence was a printer.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that was he in the Adams block? I know Moore was in the Adams block in later
Who was the
years.
one that was, where the veterans is? VFW, there was a printer in
It was
there.
maybe it was Lawrence.
Did he own the North Brookfield Journal?
Yeah, I think so.
That I don't know.
Somebody said that.
That's- I think so,
Leon
yeah.
Moore, he was a printer, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the printing shop
They
that was
printed
up
landmark.
across from Dr. White?
Say that?
Who had the printing shop across from Dr. White's?
I think Leon
office?
Moore had that one. No, was it there or was it
Across from Freddie Brucker.
Across
Right
from
across
Freddie
from
Brucker.
Dr. White's office, there was
over
a...
the newsroom?
Yeah, across from Freddie Brucker's.
It seemed to be, I can remember going to Freddie Brucker's and the print shop was on the left there.
Yeah.
It was just below the old Cassidy Hall, the Girl Scout Hall, the printing shop.
How come Freddie Brucker always gave little boys a nickel back when they got a haircut?
Go down and get something from.
And that's for you, he'd say, and he'd give you a nickel back.
You go down and get ice cream. down-
35 cents for a haircut, he'd always give us a nickel back.
Go down to Perman's to get ice cream.
The saddest thing I remember about his place was that he had all the shaving mugs with all the people's names on them. And when Paul Langevin had his auction down on Gilbert Street, they went out of town.
In defense of Mr. Langevin, he owned them for about 30 years, and
And
nobody asked for them. I think rule number one is you ask.
Yeah.
you know.
Bob could relate to this, but Civil Ledoux had a variety store on North Common Street. Now, that, you said that building was burned or was torn
Bill
down?
Doe bought the main house next to Prispex, 26, something North Common. But as it went, my great-grandmother Ledoux, yeah, she was the entrepreneur in the family, and Skip, at age 14, worked in the store continuously for 50 years, and probably some of you went to Uncle Skip's. He just worked all the time, like the Sharons, and he's, the one thing about you wonder why there are no small businesses in town, because the people that dedicated themselves to serving the public worked incredible hours, 40, not 40 or 50 hour week. They work 80 hours a week. And somebody once said, when you work for yourself, you throw away the clock. But Skip worked for 50 years, and he died in 1969. He worked for Dupels after he closed the store. But it was a very elementary store, cold cuts, cold meats, but there was you got Rodzik down the street, you had Ubecks down the street, you had Maduras. The town had an incredible amount of small business people. And this, what Buddy's revealing tonight, is that one moment in time, probably 29 is an excellent year.
That's just before the
Yeah.
beginning of the crash. I believe the last one that I have on the list is Julius Leopold's variety store. As a kid, I remember it as a hairdresser, but here's a picture, and it doesn't lie. And the two kids in the picture are Johnny Leopold and his sister,
Lillian Clark.
Lillian Cochran.
That was across from the senior center.
Yeah, Trudy Quigley told me that when she went to the high school, they used to go up there and buy penny candy.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. And they also used to, when they, at the Grove Street School,
Well, this is
they
where
used
he
to
was.
go
That was
down where the pizzerina is now,
McCarty's.
buy candy there.
Henry McCarty's was.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Henry was the Railway Express agent, yeah. Yeah.
What about how, Hugh Tyer's bakery?
That came in later years. Yeah. I've got 31, 32, up to 1940, but I figured this was almost enough
Yeah.
for one session.
Excellent.
Okay, any questions?
Was Annie Martins in business
No. I've got her down, and we've got the location, but she wasn't in business then. And I never remember her heading the business, but I remember the Hazards having a pool hall there. Do you remember that? No? Yeah. Doc remembered it.
Yeah.
Where Fagnell lived?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just a few doors up from Sitfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Ellen.
What's the date of the theater? When did they begin business as a theater? Start?
Star Theater.
You know, there's an article I wrote on the Star Theater and the new leader 20 years ago. I don't know if it was 14 and 29, I just don't know, but I did write a story about the Star. The chances are it's in there.
It was in business in 29, you said.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it goes back,
Oh, motion pictures started in the late, I think.
no, I know, but I'm just
No, but
wondering,
1890s, I don't know when it.
but I was wondering how.
I'm gonna have to dig out the volume of articles.
Any other questions?
Yeah, where did the term spa come from, actually? You know that? The
What's the
origin
word?
of the word spa for
Yeah, the
the
spa parents, the spa.
store?
Boston Spa, New York, I don't know.
It has to do with,
What's Smith, you would know, what's spa, what's the derivative of
Mexican
spa?
jumbo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with peanuts on it. Yeah.
Is it a short for something?
I have no idea.
Good question.
Yeah, well, yeah, that one is almost, answers all your questions on Sunday.
Look it up in your Wikipedia.
Yes, Teresa?
Buddy, you only mentioned one chicken farmer in town
No.
at that time. Was
In
he the only
29.
one?
In 29.
What about Mr. Bennett and Crooks? When did they
I
start?
think Mr. Bennett was still firing for the asbestos, and he hadn't started the Mrs. Jess. I've got some pictures here of the Crooks boys, but I didn't want to show those
Yeah.
until
That was
we
later?
get to the, yeah. Yeah, because Stearns Crooks is mentioned quite often,
Yeah.
and I think Stearns Crook was
The one that
Donald's
started it,
father.
and then
yeah.
Donald-
No other questions? I'll give it back to our El Presidente.
Well,